start the launch sequence.
Countdown for liftoff, T-5.
Are your kids ready for life after school?
1, 0.
Let's get them ready.
Mission control, we have liftoff.
Welcome to the launch sequence. I am Bill Priestley. This is a podcast you can find on your favorite podcast distributors, but now also in video form on YouTube at the Dream Job Factory, as we look to interview those individuals that can help you as parents figure out how to help your child figure out what they want to do in their life. One of the most relied upon paths a person can take from high school to the real world is through a public, usually in-state college or university. They can range in size from the satellite campus in rural areas to the flagship state university that oftentimes can enroll over 40,000 students. Middle Tennessee State University finds itself right in the middle of that at around 20,000 undergraduates, making it the largest locally governed public institution in the state. And joining us today are two stalwarts of the MTSU Career Development Center, Director Becca Moore and Holly Allen, Assistant Director for Career Development. Ladies, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So as let me ask kind of the obvious question just to get everybody familiar with MTSU. Under ideal circumstances, Becca, how would you like the undergraduate student to interact with career services? If you could get them day one as a freshman and then help them all the way through the process, how would you, under ideal circumstances, how would you like that to work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I mean, our saying is often, come visit us early and often, right? A lot of times people don't know what they don't know. And as they are exposed to a variety of different things in the academic setting, right, new opportunities present themselves, and perhaps they start questioning things or they become more willing to try new things. And so really, if we could get them early on in that first year, and then again, multiple touch points throughout their academic experience, that would really be an ideal opportunity for them.
Holly, anything to add to that in terms of what she would say?
No, I think that sums it up. The students need different things at different points in time. So if we can get them early and develop a relationship, that will help them be comfortable with coming back throughout their journey. Sure.
So that's the ideal situation. What's the actual situation in terms of when do they come to you? Hopefully not 6 weeks before they're graduating and they really need some help, but hopefully before that. Becca, what's your actual experience?
2 weeks before graduation, or an assignment is due. I mean, we have some that are really good at planning, right? And some wonderful faculty partners, right? So the Career Center at MTSU is a division of student affairs. And so we actually kind of bridge that gap between student affairs and academic affairs by going into the classrooms and doing a lot of presentations and partnerships with faculty. So students really view us as a partner in their academic journey, right? We have similar conversations, for example, about how to find internships or get experiential education. We would refer them to the EXL office or MT Engage. So because we're neutral, which is kind of nice, right? We're not necessarily tied to an academic unit. So we really just want is best for students. So we help them along that journey.
Holly, what's your experience when hopefully a kid doesn't come in 2 weeks before graduation and say, I need help, please help me?
They do.
Okay.
I was going to say they come 6 months after they've graduated because they can't find a job.
Okay.
Because our services are available to alumni as well. It just depends on what their needs are. Like we see a lot of students that need an internship and they've been referred to our office. Our services are optional. And so we really rely on referrals from academic advisors, faculty. They heard about us through us showing up in their classroom. So yeah, those referrals are key.
So for either one of you, how would you describe, just as we kind of get a handle on MTSU, how would you describe the MTSU or the average MTSU student? I know there's a lot of diversity there and a lot of interests, a lot of different places that you could go, but any commonalities in terms of how you would gauge the entire population?
Mm. Well, I would say that's a little bit tricky, right? Because
Sure.
everybody is unique. I think one thing that's impressed me about MTSU students is a lot of them are working and or commuting. And so knowing that those are, I don't want to say barriers, right? Because everybody needs to make a living and pay their bills. But it is hard, as Holly mentioned, to do an internship, especially perhaps an unpaid one. We don't support that, but they're often out there, right? And how people get connected to different opportunities, helping students navigate finding those opportunities while still potentially supporting themselves and or a family.
Holly, anything there?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think I would agree with Becca that we have a mostly commuter campus. And a lot of our students a lot of the students are first gen, but we do have a large non-traditional population as well. So they have different needs.
No, that definitely gives at least our audience at least some idea of the MTSU student, as opposed to, say, for instance, the UT student, the UK student, the UA student, and of course in the private sector there as well. When I was on campus, you all made me aware of a fact that I was not aware of, and that is that students on financial aid must declare a major immediately. In terms of getting ready, in terms of the college experience, they have to declare a major in order to get that financial aid. I would have to think, though, that some of them at least do that just for the purposes of making sure they get that aid, and then maybe perhaps come and see you and say, I really honestly have no idea. If that process rings true to some effect, what's the course of action? Someone comes into your office early. I have no clue what to do. How do we go from there?
Yeah, that happens a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So we, thankfully I have a highly trained staff that really employs a lot of different series of questions, motivational interviewing, counseling, social work backgrounds to try and get at understanding what is a driver for those students, right? What has their exposure been? Do they have work experience at all? And then do their skills and abilities and passions all align to meet what they think their financial needs are, right? And so that's why it's important, as I mentioned earlier, that we work with students throughout the whole process, because whether they're starting at baseline of nothing or they think they know something and change their mind, all of those supports are in place for them, and those questions happen at any stage. But we offer different assessments as well to help them analyze some information, make them more aware of, different careers. We all don't know what we don't know, right? So jobs that were out here, 10 years ago aren't here anymore. And who would have thought that things like prompt engineers would be a thing today, right? When they weren't 2 years ago with the growth of AI. So really just helping students understand where their skills and abilities and aptitudes lie.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that brings me to an interesting point in that at least I'm familiar with Middle Tennessee, having grown up here for most of my life anyway. Murfreesboro is the geographical center of the state. And as you look at it, as I would presume, a lot of the students at MTSU would perhaps come from maybe a 2.5, 3 hour drive from Murfreesboro. I mean, a good chunk of them would be kind of in that category there. And you talk about exposure in terms of the fact that a lot of those counties in that area, excluding, say, Nashville, are going to be rural counties. And I've lived in one of those counties for a number of years, and I'm not going to say which one because I'm going to speak slightly badly about them. But I got a true sentiment from high schoolers of, I can't wait to get out of here. And so they're not really interested in perhaps working in the industries that are present in that particular county. And maybe MTSU is a way to get out from that. Is it hard to help someone who says, I don't want to work in an environment I've been exposed to my entire life? Is that something that you run into?
I think sometimes, right, that's always a possibility where people want to move on, whether it's a rural area or a really large area, right?
Mm-hmm.
People have a desire for a change of scenery sometimes. So yeah, we work with them to help them understand what the opportunities are. Sometimes, though, quite honestly, it's the flip experience as well, where somebody says they want to do X, Y, and Z, but they want to stay in Middle Tennessee, and those
Mm-hmm.
opportunities aren't available there as well, right? Holly can really speak a lot to the entertainment industry, and geography is a limiting factor for a lot of people in that industry, right? My background is in the agriculture industry, and similarly, depending on what somebody wants to do, the reality is they may need to move um, to start their career. Not that they can't come back, right? Over time, usually most things come full circle, but the willingness to move away and try something is usually leads to a good start in somebody's career.
Yeah, Holly, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, it depends. Your question made me think of the pressure that students sometimes get from family members to go into whatever the family would, whatever the family business is, or we have generations of people who are farmers or teachers. Um, and sometimes the student is an artist and wants to go into wants to take a creative path, and so they're struggling between family and the obligations and love that they have for their family and the pressure that they may feel like they're getting, but also this desire and passion that they're going towards. And so we can help them navigate those conversations as well. But
So
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how, as someone just as an interest in that, how do you do that? Obviously, it's a case by case basis. Obviously you
Yes,
have to go from that
right. I
direction
mean,
there as well.
they're
But is
sensitive conversations, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we do, we pride ourselves on doing holistic coaching and advising. So we're having deeper conversations with these students. We want to get to know them, and I want to know what their hopes and dreams are. And where their barriers are as they are willing to reveal them, right? Like, we're not licensed therapists. Becca is, but the rest of us are not licensed counselors. So we do referrals to counseling services if the conversation needs to go beyond what we can offer. But we do like to have deep, honest, meaningful conversations with students so that we're getting at the heart of what are their hopes and dreams and what are the next steps, and what does that conversation with your parents look like, and do you need counseling services to help coach you through that. So it depends on the student. I like to just keep asking deeper questions, like why do you want to do that, tell me why, to help them think. And sometimes they haven't articulated it to anyone before. So we're acting as sounding boards, but also coaxing them to get at the truth of
that
what they want to do.
that's a great philosophy there as well. So Becca, you mentioned assessments. Let's jump back to that for a little bit. Your thoughts on assessments, how you use them, when they are perhaps appropriate, when they're perhaps inappropriate, and getting, as some might assume, a machine involved in trying to help my child figure out what they want to do with their life.
Well, it's interesting. That's a great question. The state of Tennessee, if that's where a student is from, does a really good job, and they use a platform called U-Science, and all high schoolers take that at some point. And so oftentimes career aptitude and assessment is not a new conversation to the students, but understanding how to use the information, right? So regardless of whether somebody's looking for career help or personal help, an assessment is only a tool, right? And as Holly mentioned, we take a holistic approach. And so that's why we have the model that we have, because it gives us information, and it may be either affirming information that somebody is on the right path, or it may pose information about things to try or things that they haven't thought about. So I think assessment is a helpful tool, but it should never be used in isolation without other resources and without talking through somebody to understand what the results mean.
Holly, anything to add there?
Yes, the conversation just has to go along with it, right? Because they can take the assessment and maybe they're in a certain frame of mind or mood, or they're answering the questions based on what they think they should answer instead of what they actually believe is true. So it is important to have that holistic conversation with them along with going over the results of the assessment.
So with that, I've wanted to ask this question for a while, and you guys are going to be the guinea pigs that get it the first time. So good luck with it. But there are lots of assessments maybe at times, and they don't have to be, but they may be scary at times because sometimes they do pop up with information. Oh, I really didn't know that about myself, or this came as a surprise to me. What are your thoughts on what is a good assessment? And I don't necessarily mean like the program that they're using, but that the feedback you're getting is effective and at least something to listen to.
Well, I think that's a great question.
It's a tough question.
I think it depends what the lens is that somebody is wanting to use it with and what the expected outcomes are. Right. And I think that's why in our office, we require students to meet with us first to even see if an assessment is appropriate, because a lot of times it's not. Right. It's not going to tell us anything new or different. It's really about pulling out of the student what they already know about themselves to narrate their story on their own, and us saying, good job, you're absolutely right. So what is stopping you from trying to get experience at company X or at an airport, right? So it is a lot of times it's not a useful tool, right? So I think it depends who you ask, right? If you're asking psychologists what make a good assessment, that's going to be very different than if you're asking a third grade teacher what makes a good assessment, right? And personally, as somebody who has taught in public education and has my own thoughts on standardized assessment and its correlation to how intelligent people are, I'm very cognizant with my team about understanding again that, one, we work in an academic setting, so people have their opinions on these assessments. And so that is a disclaimer that we share with students as well, right? That everybody is going to have an opinion about the validity of these assessments. And again, it's just a tool of information, right? And so I think if you set expectations, then any assessment, if it's a realistic expectation, has the potential to be a good assessment if it provides good information. But that is very subjective to both whom is delivering it and who is receiving the information.
Holly, any thoughts there?
I can tell you what I like to happen when
Sure.
or what is a good experience in my own opinion, is when it's affirming for the student, is when, to Becca's point, maybe the assessment wasn't needed, right? If they actually do know what they want, but sometimes they just need some outside confirmation, or they need something else to affirm what they already know. And I think that can be really helpful. It's like they think, they're like, oh, I believe this is who I am, but now I have this piece of paper that affirms what I think. And that can be really helpful so that they feel like they're on the right track.
How do you deal then with the hopefully not too often occasion when what comes out on the piece of paper is not necessarily expected?
That can be challenging. So we're looking at, that's why we like to have that conversation in the beginning, because if a student, let's say, has super high anxiety or is depressed, the results are probably not going to be very helpful until those barriers are dealt with, right? Or the student is in a healthier place to be able to get an assessment that's more true to who they are. And that, it does happen, right? So it's challenging because we don't know how they took it, right? Or if the assessment, we call it that it will come out flat, that it doesn't give us any highs or lows. And that's challenging.
Becca, let's change gears just a little bit. Obviously, we're in a changing world. AI is vastly becoming much more a part of it. How do you see AI being used in career services? And in what ways do you see it perhaps maybe making a larger stake, if it does, in the years to come?
Well, I think, right, with anything, you have to acknowledge the ethical allegations of a system, right? And so we have some people that are very against it because of the resources that it takes. And so, um, that's one thing that we acknowledge, right? Everybody, again, has an opinion about that. But it has the capacity to be a really useful tool, actually, in the job search process. Our experience has been that it can not necessarily for idea generation, but enhancement, right? So if a student is trying to think about how to describe their work experience at a horse barn, let's say, right, they can put some prompts into the system about how maybe they would describe some things that they did. And then, it will give them feedback, and then they can decide what components of that best represent their experience. So it is helpful in that regard. It is also helpful, we have found, to help students understand and alumni how to work within applicant tracking systems, right? So applicant tracking systems are what a lot of large companies use to help screen employees to make sure they're qualified for jobs. And so now we can also use technology, right? Usually for free, to help students understand maybe where gaps are in their application materials or their resumes. Because most people are taught not to boast, right? And so then people hit the job market and now they just have to talk about themselves all the time. And usually most people are really humble and passive about that. And so allowing them to understand how to reword stuff and articulate what they've done via computer is sometimes very helpful.
Holly, have you seen AI and how it affects the students in terms of not only figuring out what they want to do, but also, like Becca said, using it as a research tool?
Oh, yes. There's sort of the good side and the bad side, right? I mean, students are sometimes using TikTok for career advice. I mean, I know that's social media. So, like using AI for counseling advice or career advice, we wouldn't want to promote that. But it can be really helpful in elevating your documents and kind of everybody's sort of doing it. And employers are saying that, right, those resumes stand out, like that are using more professional language. We always coach students that you do not want to copy and paste what AI gives you. You want to use it as a tool to read through and pick out the best parts or the parts that make sense and that are true for you when developing your materials. So you never want it to write the materials for you, but it can help to elevate the language and to get at the thing that you're trying to communicate faster.
Yeah. You mentioned social media. Of course, one of the major platforms that we all know very well probably is LinkedIn. And that's, of course, can do wonders in the matters of researching, trying to figure out what someone has done over the course of their career to get to a certain job. Also, of course, giving young people the ability to post if necessary, or if they deem it worthy, to try and make good impressions on those people that might be in the hiring circles that they're looking to. How do you advise students to use LinkedIn? Should they get in? Should they be very active in it? What's your strategy as far as that's concerned?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah. And
ahead.
then university systems also have, most of them use a platform called Handshake, which
Yeah.
is really big in what they call the early talent space. So again, I think it's, we do a lot of training on what is best etiquette, if you will, right? Like these are best practices, but it doesn't, it's up to the student to decide how they're going to engage in those experiences, right? We can't make them. And it never takes the place of having the ability to network well, right? And so even though all of this technology is available to reach out to people and find out information, it doesn't take the place of sending a friendly email or picking up a phone call or, answering the phone or going to a networking event. So those are the sorts of things that we try to coach students on.
We coach students on using Handshake and LinkedIn every day. I mean, that's part of our conversation with students, especially ones that are job searching. And the conversation, it isn't always job searching, right? Sometimes it's, I don't know what to do with my life. We're starting from the beginning. But when we are talking about internships and jobs, we are part of our conversation is around how to use Handshake, the strategies involved with that, and also the strategies of using LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
So having an updated profile in both systems is really important. And then utilizing the networking tools that are available in the platform. Networking is such a key when it comes to job search strategy. It's not just applying to jobs. It is the outreach. It's making those human connections with people.
Absolutely.
That can be the make or break whether or not you get an interview.
That's so important. It's not necessarily who you know; it's who knows you, and that's definitely something that hits hard to the networker there as well. The best question I have of the day: when a student gets it, when a student says, "Hey, I figured it out," have you noticed anything common in terms of that experience and how it kind of latched in and said, I know that this is fitting together for me. I'm figuring it out. Is there anything that you've noticed in those kind of experiences for students that says, hey, there may be, if possible, just a catalyst or a way that they figured out how to get from point A to point B?
Well, I will say, the job search and career planning process is very anxiety provoking. So I think when my observation is when somebody feels like they get it, as you said, there's kind of this like a boulder has been lifted off of their shoulders and an air of confidence finally comes in, right? Because they know steps to take to attain something that feels tangible to them. And that provides great relief, right? A little bit of the anxiety is gone. And it's clear how to move forward. And that's really important for students. So whether they work with us or faculty or academic advisors to make that happen, it is very rewarding to be able to see that process happen, to go from somebody who perhaps didn't even really know what to do with a biology degree, let's say, to clarity, right? In how to go to grad school or, work in a lab and know exactly how to get involved on campus, who to network with, how to ask questions of guest speakers. It's cool to see all of that come together.
Holly, let me ask you just slightly different on that same kind of level, though. There is the figuring out of what they want to do, and then there's the process by which they have to go and do that. And I bring this up because of a student that I taught years and years ago, who was a great fit for being a veterinarian. She was a person who, I was working in a school where we had a pet rat snake, and it would hiss at everybody except this one girl. And she was able to handle it and stroke it, and it was fine with that, but it would not let anybody else near it. And she was through that. I mean, she had a real love of animals, and she was a good student. And so there was that idea, hey, I should become a veterinarian. What she didn't know in the process is that she would have to take calculus in order to do that. And she was not a math person. I mean, it was like algebra 2 and done, basically. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the end result and then the process by which you have to get there, do you have any conversation? Okay, I figured out what I want to do. And then all of a sudden there's the mountain. and the mountain must be climbed if you're going to, or it should be climbed anyway, if you're going to do this. Do you run into anything like that?
All the time.
Okay.
Because you
Tell me.
use the veterinary
Yeah.
example, I'm going to pass it back to Becca because that is her realm. She has these conversations with animal science students all the time.
Yeah. So I also teach the careers in animal and veterinary science class at MTSU. And that's a very real thing, right? It's either calculus, physics, or chemistry, usually when people think that they're going to go into a professional profession. And as I mentioned earlier, though, it's really about exposing people to different ways of which they can continue to work with animals or people, depending on which track that they want to go, that may not require the level of education. Right? So maybe you can be a vet tech, or maybe you can be a zookeeper. Right. So really talking about how do you want to work with animals? A lot of people forget that every veterinarian has to actually deal more with people versus animals, unless you work in some sort of exotic setting, right? Or at the zoo or in the wild. And so, again, it's about having those conversations with people to understand what their exposure has been to a variety of different things. We hear all the time, right? Somebody wants to be a doctor or nurse because they want to help people, and people want to be a veterinarian because they like animals. And all of those are great, but there are literally thousands of other jobs that people can do that both help animals and help people. So we get to have those conversations with them.
It's an interesting point. I remember but several people and students that I've run into have decided to make career choices based on a TV show.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't
So,
me.
yeah.
It is some grief though, right? Like the student, like we'll see nurses that can't get through the nursing program. Like they can't get through anatomy, or and so and their whole life they want to be a nurse. And so it is this sense of loss that we have to sort of help coach them through. That may even involve counseling services, right? Because their idea has been shattered now, or they can't attain it here, right? And maybe they could get a biology degree and then go to nursing school elsewhere. So it's just like, and opening up what are other options, like Becca was saying, right? What are some other options that will still fulfill you and give you the same satisfaction as this one path that you may not even know about?
Well, and so many
path,
times too, I just want to add to that there is, to Holly's point, right? A lot of times people don't understand the separation of identity, of career identity and personal identity, especially depending on their familial structure, right? And so teasing that apart too is really important. Like you can love animals and do that as a job, or you can love animals and not do that as a job, right? And so it's helping students understand, what do they want to do for money? Not saying that their interest goes away, right? So it can be a yes and, but also understanding what is the core of their identity separate from a job, right? Nobody, right? Like I'm the director, but I'm a whole bunch of other things, right? I'm a daughter and a mother and an animal lover, right? And so it's helping people understand what those things are as well.
Gotcha. So let me dovetail off that just a little bit in terms of, obviously that's an issue that you're running into at some point. What is the bigger issue? I shouldn't say the biggest issue. Maybe the one that catches you the most in terms of, we have to work through this, be it whether or not it is the right mountain to climb, or be it whether this is the right career for you, or what are the questions that get the most attention, if you will, in your office when it comes to either figuring it out, working through it, getting it, practicing interviews, or doing those things that are necessary to get the job in the first place? What happens the most, or what gets your attention the most, I should say?
That's a really great question. I think we have a pretty unique spread, to be honest. I mean, on paper, right, the thing that we have the highest volume in is like marketing materials, right? So resumes, cover letters, grad school applications. But I think historically that's because when people hear of a career center, that's what they think of. And so we've really spent a lot of time over the last several years changing the dynamic of that conversation. And yes, those things are important, but also people understanding actually what they're going to do when they leave college is really important, right? And how to be successful as they enter into that first experience. And that they're not alone in trying to figure out what their options and opportunities are available to them. So on paper, it would be the marketing materials, but we spend, a lot of time on those one-on-one conversations, confidence building, helping people understand which way to go with their life. As Holly mentioned, working in tandem with counseling services as well is often helpful. Yeah. I don't know, Holly, anything else to add?
Yeah, I feel like conversations I have a lot are around self-advocacy. Like the students feel like there's barriers to them asking for help. And so encouraging them to ask for informational interviews, do job shadowing, talk to professionals in the field that you think that you're interested in so that you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. And talk to multiple people, because you may talk to one person who's burnt out, right? Or like doesn't have you need to talk to a few people just to get a good idea of what that profession is. But I find the students have trouble asking. And I don't, a part of it I'm sure is time. Our students are commuters, they're working, they're going to school for full time. Some have families. So it's hard to make the time for that kind of thing when there's no grade attached to it. But I do have a lot of conversations around advocating for yourself, and it's okay to ask. And that person that's in that job was a beginner, just like you are now, and they had to ask for help. So just trying to lower the bar as far as, around the fear of rejection, failure, whatever they may be feeling.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't
to
know
put
that
it.
totally answered your question.
No, I know it did.
I went off on another tangent.
No, but you bring up a great point, which is the fact that at least we've heard, those of us of our generation, perhaps, that millennials, Gen Alpha, don't like to talk on the phone. And how bad of a problem is that? I mean, obviously, we see it as a tremendous problem because that's how we did it. That's how we got up the corporate ladder, if we did. But do you see a way around that, or is that still just the way that it has to be done, that you have to create those human connections, whether it be through now a Zoom call or, like I said, a telephone call, just to be able to have that human connection?
Yes. They have a lot of fear around picking up the phone. The advisors and I have joked about having networking boot camp workshops, have phones that they have to call each other just so they get used to it. I think, parents, if you're listening, have your child order the pizza on the phone, or, just so that they practice calling in a stranger, an adult. So that is an issue for sure. But we try to help them with that. I mean, part of it is practice, right? They just have to they have to do it to get over the hump of the fear.
Yeah. Becca, anything to add to that?
Well, I think, oftentimes with those conversations, the fear of unknown is always scary, but helping them understand what is the absolute worst thing that's going to happen if you reach out to that person, right? The absolute worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. That's the worst thing, right? The sky's not going to fall, nothing bad is going to happen. And so we really do a lot of the downplaying and confidence building, right? Downplaying of worst case scenario. It's not the grand scheme of things. It's really not that bad. Yeah, that's what I would add.
In the greater scheme of things, it's what's the worst thing that could happen? And the worst thing in many cases is nothing changes.
Right.
So
that's it.
Yeah.
They ghost you. Well, right?
Yeah.
You tried.
Yeah. Well, all right. We're still at square one. We didn't go to square zero
Right,
backward.
yeah.
Anyway.
I think setting expectations too. Like I tell students, reach out to 10 people, and if you get one informational interview, you're doing good.
Yeah.
So just to lower the expectations and to drive the fear of rejection, like it's people are busy, right? That's just it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So let's move on to another interesting aspect that at MTSU many schools certainly have, and that is the option for students to go on to grad school in terms of furthering their education, if necessary or not. How do you handle those? Obviously, there are certain careers that require it. I mean, you have to go to med school, you have to go to law school if you're going. I mean, assuming that you to pass the bar to get your residency and to move on in those fields. But grad school as a whole, having that conversation, what are you looking for in terms of, is this necessary, or is this the student just basically saying, I'd like to stave off going into a job for another 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it really is tied to the student's goals, right? And is that advanced degree required? Right? A lot of psychology students don't realize that if they want to be a therapist, they do have to go to grad school, right? And they don't necessarily know that going in. And all they know is they don't want to teach in a high school, perhaps, right? Which is something often that they can do with an undergrad degree. So I think what I'm reading between your tea leaves, though, is it required all of the time? And what do we tell students? And what I tell students is it is in 2 years or 4 years. If you're just going to extend the time, if you don't know what you want to do now, you're not going to know anymore in 2 or 4 years, but you're going to be a lot more in debt. And so, right, we have those conversations with them. And sometimes that happens, right? They think that they just keep going to school and this magic fairy's going to drop off a job on their doorstep and they're just going to walk out one day and know what to do. And if they don't put in the work, it's unclear still. So, yeah.
Let me interject just something that you said, just to kind of clarify it just for a moment. Maybe, for instance, that the idea of going to graduate school is, hey, if I go to graduate school, that's going to mean I'm going to make more money.
Yeah, that often is not the case, right? I mean, everybody has to start entry level somewhere. Now, it might be mid-career or later career, right, where that advanced degree is required to move up within an organization. But very rarely is somebody with zero experience in a field going to be offered more money because they have a higher degree.
Right. Okay.
And oftentimes you can kind of shoot yourself in the foot if you get a graduate degree before you have any work experience. And an employer is looking at your graduate degree and maybe they don't have a graduate degree, right? So I always tell students, like if we're talking about business school, let's say, go work. I will tell them it is probably a better idea if you go and work first and then get your MBA later on, when you feel like you want to move up into a leadership role, or you need that MBA to move up. But otherwise, it's just tough to, like, for an employer looking at all they have is education and a graduate degree. You kind of put yourself in a tough spot, I think, entering the work field.
So is that the litmus test in terms of, okay, I need a graduate degree? Obviously, it's done by industry that you need to go into, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you need to have the work experience, at least to show you that and maybe they need the work experience to prove to themselves that the graduate degree is necessary.
Depending on what the degree is in, right? Like, as we talked about, there are certain professions where immediate grad school makes sense. Like if you know you want to be a professor, just go ahead and get the ball rolling, start teaching, doing the thing that you want to do. But if it is, to Becca's point, if they don't really know, then the best thing they can do is go get some work experience.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let me throw one at you, Becca, since we threw the okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, even though grad schools look for people that have some sort of exposure, when they're looking at people to admit, right? Even law schools do, right? It is much more attractive to bring in, for example, we had a student staff member in our office, right, who was part of the mock trial groups on campus. While that isn't necessarily work experience, they're exposed to the content of the area of interest. Right, veterinary schools and med schools, they look at people who have submerged themselves in those fields and confirmed that that is the right path for them. So I think there is a lot of value in people understanding, even if they are on the grad school path, that you still have to have experience, right? Now, whether it's paid or unpaid or volunteer or not, that's questionable. But grad school does not ever take the place of experience.
Okay, so let me jump back here, and I'm going to ask this question to Holly because I know we gave one to Becca on the agricultural side of things. One thing that MTSU unexpectedly has, just because of its location, is the recording industry department, and that has been proven to be, at least I was at MTSU for a very short period of time, and when I was there, that was the point at which they had announced that you had to apply to become a major in the recording studio major, and you had to have a candidacy to be able to move forward. And obviously, it's extremely highly competitive. Obviously, it's very specific to Nashville in the fact that there is the music city and the industry that is there as well. When talking about going into a career that is highly competitive, no reason to go to graduate school to get into this industry. How do you coach someone, again, you're going to be going up against your peers for this kind of thing? How do you coach them to say, look, and maybe I'm not one to look at odds makers, but you've got such a percentage to get into if you're going to make this. How do you advise students when it comes to, I want to do this, I think I'm elite, or this is fun, and if they have that attitude, they're just going to get run over by people who really want to go into this?
Well, it depends. There's different concentrations.
Okay.
So if we're and there's more competitive concentrations than other concentrations. So there is a music business concentration. So if you want to work in AR, talent management, like anything on the business side of the industry, it is a lot easier to get a job on that side. Because there are more jobs available, working at a record label or working at a licensing company, let's say, as opposed to a songwriting student who wants to be a star, right? That is extremely competitive, and we know that the chances are pretty slim. I am not in the business of dashing people's dreams. I want, I was a theater major, right? I have a degree in pretend, and I have managed to make a living for myself. And those soft skills that I learned as a theater major have proven to be invaluable, right? So the skills that you're learning as a creative person, those are skills that are sought after. For employers want those kinds of skills that artists have. It's just a matter of knowing how to translate those skills, right? So nobody's going to hire you graduating unless you have made a bunch of connections and you are already working and making music yourself, and have built a platform, because the whole thing is different now, right? Like you have to build your own platform for anybody to even be interested. So unless the student has been doing that, nobody's going to just hire you to be a songwriter, right? You have, it's like you're running your own business. I wish all the creative students had to minor in entrepreneurship, because you're really running your own business. But you need a job, hopefully adjacent or related or in the vicinity of music business, so that you feel connected, to pay your bills, while you're pursuing your art, and getting that going, right? And hopefully eventually the tides will turn and that makes more money and then you can let go of the day job. So it just depends on the conversation. We have a lot of audio production students that want to be studio engineers, or they want to go into live production. But those are growing fields. I mean, the entertainment industry is growing still at like twice the rate of other industries. So there are jobs, but it is so much about relationships. Every industry, we have networking conversations. The people component is so important regardless. I think especially in the music business in Nashville, you have to form relationships for somebody to give you a first gig, and you have to get an internship so that people know who you are and that you meet people. So that was a long answer to your question, but hopefully it sheds some light on
No,
that
absolutely,
degree.
absolutely no. And I think I heard someone say not too long ago on social media, the sexier the job, the better you have to be in order to achieve something in it. And so, if you wanted to be the songwriter, you need to be in the top 0.1% of songwriters if you're going to be successful. If you want to be a welder, you don't have to be in the top 50% to make a good living. In that there as well.
You could be a
But that's
welder and a songwriter
you
on the
can, and
side.
you can make very good money doing that as well. So with that, let's get to our last section of this first part and talk about parents and parents having their kids coming to MTSU. What advice would you have for parents in terms of how active they need to be in terms of, are you getting an internship? Are you getting your resume looked at? How active should parents be with their kids? And again, it's going to probably depend on where they want to go. But what would you say is a good amount of interjection by a parent in terms of how much they want to help their kid?
We find it helpful if parents kind of know about some of the things happening on campus to have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation with their students. For example, the big career fairs, or if an internship is required for their academic degree. But really just reminding them to take advantage of their resources, I think, is very important. Other than that, though, right, most of our students, unless they're a dual enrollment high school student, are of age, right, and are adults, and they kind of have to figure it out on their own. And so, right, college is such a great time where people develop that autonomy and that confidence to navigate the world on their own. But everybody likes encouragement and help along the way. So I think, right, I mean, college is a transition time for parents too, to understand how roles are shifting and shifting from, telling young people what to do versus just asking them how they can support, or did they think about going to the career fair to just check it out? That sort of stuff is what we find really helpful.
Holly?
Yeah, that's a fine line, and probably depends on the student's relationship with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I was a young person, trying to figure things out on my own, and I have a parent who's harping at me to, do these particular things, that may make me not want to do them. So I think, to Becca's point, just sort of some simple encouragement or asking questions. What do you think about this? Or, because that it is a tough line that parents are trying to figure out themselves, of how involved am I now? But I think encouraging the student to do some self-discovery is helpful. If those are conversations that haven't happened, to ask them about what they're interested in, like get to know them maybe as an adult now, so that they feel like they have some autonomy and that the parent is listening in a different way now, maybe than they did when they were a minor. And that may build some trust and lead to some deeper conversations. And also to, like, don't live your child, that saying of like not living your own dreams through your child, of having like a particular plan. I didn't go to college, and so you're going to go to college and you're going to study this thing, to let them be their own person.
Yeah. Don't live vicariously through your kids.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's important too. A lot of
Go
families
ahead.
I work with, Bill, are, I think it's important as a family unit, especially if finances are involved, to have conversations up front about what the expectations are. Because a lot of times students will feel pressure to do what their parents say occupationally, because they're providing some sort of financial support. And so I think as a family unit, it's always, if money is involved, I think it's always really important before a student even goes away to have a conversation about what those expectations are. Because we deal with a lot of anxiety and unsettledness around people feeling like they still have to please their parents because finances are tied up in the process.
Right.
Well,
Right.
there
And
might
that,
be cultural differences too, right? Of like, there may be expectations for a student that's in a particular culture in their family than, for a different student. So
Mhm. And Becca, that brings up an interesting point in terms of the finances, as you mentioned. When you have those introductory conversations, are you looking at if you bring it up, are you looking at them saying, "Oh, I'm going to have student loans to pay off for X amount of years," making sure that what I do after graduation is going to be able to help me pay that off?
Sometimes that comes up for students, absolutely, right?
Mhm.
I mean, as the earlier example, in veterinary school or professional schools, they're very expensive. And the reality that,
Mhm.
for example, as a veterinarian, you're going to start off around 60 grand, and usually I think the average student loan debt's about 140, right? That's a very real situation. Now, looking over the course of time, right, 10 years later, you're going to be making quite a bit more, hopefully, than that 60 grand. But we do have the ability to have some of those very real conversations. Similarly, what are your lifestyle expectations, right? If you think that you want to
Mhm.
buy a house by the time you're 30, how is this job that you're choosing going to get you there?
Yeah, definitely questions to answer there as well. So, before we wrap this portion of our podcast, is there anything that we haven't covered so far that you all would like to make sure that our audience knows about, Becca?
No, I think just be encouraging, right? Encourage students to visit the resources either of their community or of, their local college or the college that they're going to, is really helpful.
Holly?
yeah, for me, it would be make connections, like focus on meeting people, like learn outside of the classroom, even that you can learn on your own, but through forming relationships and meeting people, trying to find a mentor, trying to find people in your industry to talk to.
Hey, Bill Priestley here with a great opportunity for you guys as parents to help your kids figure out what they want to do with their lives by getting some inside information. It's a new webinar we're putting out once a month. Go to dreamjobfactory.com/webinar and you'll learn things such as when to talk to your kids, what to talk to them about, and what you can expect as parents in the growth process from going from a teenager to a self-supporting adult. Again, that's dreamjobfactory.com/webinar. Go there now, sign up. We'll see you online. Time now for our Pathfinders Backpack. 5 questions for Becca Moore and Holly Allen of MTSU's Career Development Center, and 5 questions to help young people trying to figure out what to do with their lives. Ladies, are you ready for these 5 questions?
Ready.
Yep.
Here we go. All right. Number 1, what is one book every student under 18 should read before they make a career-related decision, which could include their college choice?
So I didn't really focus on the career related decision because I think that the career process is often so anxiety producing. But when I thought about this question, a book that I've often reflected on is The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. And the reason why I feel like that book is just so impactful is because it reflects on this notion that life is really much more meaningful than we think. And our connections shape our journey in really profound ways. So something that you do now may not be clear why the outcome was the outcome it was, but it might be clear in 5 years. So that's why that book came to mind for me.
I love that book too. That's good.
Okay. Number two. Go ahead.
I would say that any book that is going to help a student do some self-discovery, asking questions of themselves to get at who they are, is helpful.
Excellent. So number two, what is one experience every person should have before they go into the real world to take on their first full-time position?
So I couldn't commit to one, so I'll let people pick out of these. I think people should travel.
That's fine.
I think travel is really important, both domestically and international, just to get exposure to different cultures. To volunteer, so do something beyond yourself, and at least work part-time for a non-family member.
Okay, all right.
Those are good. Mine would be an internship. If you can get an internship before going into the working world, that's really going to set you up for more success.
Okay. Number three, what is one task you would really appreciate students undertaking before the beginning the process of going after a specific career path?
Talk to people in the profession.
For obvious reasons.
Yes.
Conduct informational interviews with professionals in the field you want to go into.
Absolutely. All right. Number four, what is one thing you would tell a student to not do when trying to choose a career path?
Burn bridges. I think especially with the growth of social media and the shorthand communication that happens via pictures and video, we often have conversations with people about how to just be cognizant of what you are putting out into the world.
I would say do not go after a particular career path only for the money. There has to be another reason for you to feel fulfilled.
All right. And last one, what is one gift, tangible or intangible, that you would give someone starting the process of choosing a career path?
When I think about this, I think about being open to learning through the process instead of just focusing on the destination.
Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Well, in my experience, so often people identify an occupation, and yet as they're working towards attaining that, there are these really great opportunities that are presenting themselves, but they kind of miss the richness of the experience or the connection that the people in that experience can provide for them, just for the sake of making it to the destination.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Holly?
I would give them the gift of self-advocacy, helping them to ask for what they need and ask for the next thing that's going to move them along their path. I would also try to take away some of their fear of failure, just so that they feel like they are able to take risks.
What has been, over time, perhaps the most popular college option for high school graduates, the State University is a stalwart in the education space. But just because it's popular doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed route to success. It, however, can be more of a place to find one's heading than smaller options. And with that, the Career Services or Career Development Center can be an incredible tool students can use to navigate their college experience and gain insight and enthusiasm in finding the direction in which they want to go. I'll see you next time.
The Launch Sequence is the official podcast of the Dream Job Factory. For more information, check out our website at dreamjobfactory.com, where you can view all of the tools we have to help your child identify a life path. You can also sign up for our newsletter to get the latest podcasts and information in the career discernment space for young people. We also invite you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Dream Job Factory. This has been The Launch Sequence, giving your kids the keys to launch their careers.